Hello and welcome to Learn to Read Hebrew, 22 letters and then some. Today we're going to learn about the Aleph Bet. I'm Elior Sterling and I'll be your guide. Let's start from the beginning. The very first letter of the Aleph Bet is Aleph. Now, Aleph doesn't make any sound of its own. It takes the sound of the vowel that's underneath it or over top of it. You may have heard that the Aleph says ah, and that's kind of true in the sense that the most common vowel is the ah sound. So if you have no idea, you've got a good guess, a good bet trying to just use ah. But really, it can have other vowel sounds depending on what it's connected to. Next, we have bet. Bet is like a bite. It's like a house. Take a look at this. Do you see the house right there? And it's got a porch. I like this one better. This bet is a much clearer house with a nice porch over here on the side. This is the letter in handwriting. You'll notice that on each of these screens, I have several different fonts of block letters. And then down in this corner, I have the handwriting. All right, gimel. Gimel is kind of like the word in Hebrew for a camel, a gamal. A gamal walks long distances, and this gimel looks kind of like a walking man. You see how he's kind of like leaned over and his legs are apart as he's walking down the street or walking through the desert or wherever the heck he's walking. Next, we have dalet. Dalet is like a doorway. Do you see the doorway here? Here's the top of the door, and here's the door frame. It's a doorway, and it says D. And in handwriting, it's kind of like a 3 that stops. It's not all the way a 3. It's just kind of a loop and down. The hey is like an H. It says, except when it's at the end of a word, it usually doesn't say at the end of the word. Just like when we say the name Sarah, there's usually an H at the end of Sarah, but we don't say Sarah. We just say Sarah, right? But if the H is in the beginning, we say happy. Next, we have the vav. Now, the vav can function as a vowel, and you'll learn about that later. But when the vav is functioning as a consonant, it makes the v sound. Next, we have zayin. Zayin zigzags like a Z, and it says z. Take a look at this. Zigzag, zig. Zigzag. Even in the handwriting, it goes zigzag. Now, a chet is kind of like a hey, but it's closed up at the top. You see that? So when you say ha, your tongue is down away from the roof of your mouth and the back of your throat. But when you say ha, you kind of close the gap there towards the back of your mouth near your throat. Ha. So a chet is kind of like a closed hey. And that's what it looks like. Next we have tet. Tet says t. Yud. Yud is a very small letter, and it says y. Kaf. Kaf says k. And sometimes it says ch. You'll learn more about that later. Lamed. Lamed says L. Now, notice the handwriting for the Lamed here, because you're going to learn some other letters a little bit later that are sort of based on the Lamed in the handwriting. Next, we have Mem. Mem makes an sound, and it's kind of like a mouth that's kind of like closed down over. like the top lip is coming down. Like somebody has an overbite maybe. In the handwriting version, it looks kind of like an N. Nun. Nun says N. And you can tell the difference between Nun and Gimel because the Gimel is a walking man, but the Nun is kind of just sitting there. Samech. Samech is a circle and it says S. Samech. Ayin. Ayin is like an I, but kind of turned on its side. The ayin is like an aleph in that it takes whatever vowel it's put with, but it kind of throws it further back in the throat. So instead of being ah, it's ah. Instead of being it's eh. And I can't do that very well. But don't worry about it. Lots of people don't actually differentiate between the aleph and the ayin in modern Hebrew speaking. So just know that they're different, and sometimes you'll hear the difference when somebody speaks. Pay. Pay says p. Sadi. Sadi is the word sadi means righteous, and Sadi kind of looks like a righteous man who's fallen down on his knees and he's got his hands together and he's looking up and he's going, "Oh, fix this, please." Ah. Except in the handwriting. In the handwriting, it just looks like a giant 3. Kuf. Kuf is kind of like a monkey. I can kind of see this monkey tail and he's like hanging on something. Kuf. He says k like a K or maybe like a Q without a U. K. Resh. Resh makes the sound and it's kind of like a backwards R. So that one's pretty easy to remember. Shin. Shin is like shen, like teeth. It's got a bunch of teeth sticking up, at least in the block letter version. In the handwriting version, it just looks kind of like an E. Next we have tav. Tav says T. You'll notice that it's very similar to a chet, right? But it has this little tail at the end, or maybe that's the trunk of an elephant. I don't know. Whatever helps you remember. But wait, I told you 22 letters and then some, right? So there's this whole group of letters. It's not very many letters, don't worry. But there's a group of letters that have special final letters. In Hebrew, final is sofit. So here are a couple of examples. Let's get my face out of the way so you can see them better. So we've got a kaf and a chaf sofit. And we've got a tzadi and a tzadi sofit. Now this line, this is the line that you're writing on. Notice that the part here at the bottom that's on the line, it sort of flips down and becomes the tail. Same thing here on the tzadi. That line right there where he was on his knees, he straightens out his legs, flips them down, and now he's standing up. All right, so let's look at some more of these. So here's the chaf sofit, 2 different block letter versions of chaf sofit, and this is a handwriting version. Next, we have the one letter that really breaks the rule about flipping that line down. With the mem sofit in the block letter form, you just take the mouth and you close it all the way down. Now, this kind of looks a little bit like a samech, but you can tell the difference between a samech and a mem, because a samech is a circle, it's round, and a mem sofit is very square-ish. You'll notice, though, that in the handwriting, it's completely different. It's kind of like a balloon on a stick. That's how I learned it when I was a kid. It's also, I guess, kind of like a funky-looking P or like a backwards 9. Mem sofit. Next, we have the nun sofit. This one does follow the rules because normally you'd have a nun and there'd be like a part that comes down here across the bottom line that you're writing on, and that's flipped down and just gone straight. The fe sofit, this is a pay in the final version, and you'll notice here's your pay top, but instead of coming down like this, it goes straight down. Now, in the handwriting version, it starts out like a lamed, and then the tail comes around and points down. So, starts like a lamed, tail comes around, points down. Now we've got the tsari sofit. Again, we looked at that already. The guy straightens out his knees, and now he's standing up kind of below the line of the ground, but whatever. But in the handwriting version, it starts like a lamed, and then the tail comes around and points up. So the tsadi points up, but the fe sofit points down. All right, wait 1 second. Maybe you heard another Hebrew teacher say that the letters go Aleph, Bet, Vet, Gimel, Daled, etc., etc. So did I skip some words there? No, I did not skip any letters. There are some letters that are double letters, where there's a version of the letter with a dagesh, with a dot in the middle, and a version of the letter without the dagesh. So there used to be more of these, but there are fewer today. So let's start with the first one. Bet is both bet and vet. It's the same letter. Why do we say it's the same letter if it's got two different sounds? Well, Hebrew does everything with roots and constructions, and if there's a bet root letter, it's going to be sometimes a b sound, and it's going to be sometimes a v sound, depending on the context and the rest of the construction, but it's still the same letter, b or v, bet or vet. So let's take a look at this. Whoops, where did my cursor go? There's my cursor. So we've got our house with the little porch, the patio, right out front. And this one has the dagesh, so it's a bet. This one, we've got the house and the porch, but we don't have a dot, so it's a vet. Next one is kaf and chaf. Kaf and chaf. The kaf has a dot, and the chaf does not. Pei, fe. Pei has the dot. Fe does not. Shin, sin. Now this one's a little weirder because it's not a dot in the middle, right? Took me years to be able to figure out what the rule was for the difference between these. And this is what I've learned. This is what I've figured out. We always say shin, sin. We don't say sin, shin. We say shin, sin. So shin is the first one, and sin is the second one. And shin has the dot as you're coming into the letter because we go from right to left. And the sin has the dot as you're going out of the letter. Okay, so shin comes first and sin comes second. All right, now that we've done all that, let's talk about nikud. Nikud literally means dots, and that's exactly what the vowels are in Hebrew. The first one is shva. Now, I usually teach this as it's not really exactly a vowel. It's sort of an indication that you're going to stop the forward motion and end the syllable. So sometimes the shva will have a sound that's kind of like but a lot of times there's actually no sound at all. It's just an indication to stop that forward motion for a second. Next we have patach. Patach is just a line underneath the letter, and it says ah. Then we have kamatz, which is kind of like a T underneath, right? And it says ah most of the time, but sometimes it says oh. segol. Segol is these three dots, and it says eh. Now we have the tsere. It's these two dots, tsere, and just like the word tsere has two different sounds, tsere can sound like eh or like a. All right, we've got chataf segol. It's just a segol with a shva stuck on it. So it's going to have the eh sound, but that letter is going to sort of stop the forward motion of the syllable. Same thing with chataf patach. It's a patach with a shva stuck to it. So it's going to say that ah sound and then sort of stop that forward motion. Chataf kamatz. Same deal. It's ah or o, but it's going to change the syllable. All right, now we get to chirik. Chirik. It sounds just like that. That one little dot says e. Chirik. I think of it like a bird that says chirik, 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 e, e, e. Holam. So this aleph is just a placeholder, just like it was in all of the other Nikud slides up until now, and you'll see why I'm mentioning that. So that dot over top of the aleph, that's an O sound, holam. And this is the first of the cases where the vav doesn't say v, but actually becomes a vowel. That dot over top of the vav makes the vav say O. Now we've got the kubutz. The kubutz is three little dots that are in a diagonal line, and they say oo. And now we've got the second time that a vav turns into a vowel. That dot right there in the middle makes that a shuruk, and instead of saying the letter says oo. Now I have a way to remember this, and that is when the dot is up high, it's like, oh, look at that. But when the dot is in the middle, it's like a tummy ache. Ooh, my tummy hurts. So, holam, oh, wow. Shuruk, ooh. All right, let's get some practice in. Whoops. Couldn't get my cursor in there for you. So, ah, e, e, o, u. Ba, be, bi, bo, boo. Va, ve, vi, vo, vu, ve, va. Vu, a, ba, e, be, o, bo, e, vo. Whoops. Where were we? Vo, bi, ge, e, ba, a, da, bi, ve, boo. Va, gi, vi, be, u, ve. All right, now let's look at that last slide. Let's look at a few words. Let's look at how all those things come together. So the first word is Abba. Notice that we read down and over and down and over. Abba, Abba, dad. Ima, Ima, mom. Ba is coming, masculine. Ba'a is coming, feminine. So now we can say Abba, ba, and Ima, ba'a. Thank you so much for learning the alphabet with me. The next video will be some more practice reading all of the sounds of the Hebrew alphabet in some simple letters and simple combinations. See you then.